Your forthcoming book is called It Takes a Pillage. Explain.
Well, in '04, when I wrote Other People's Money, the idea was that these banks were taking deposits to leverage into all these arcane securities that the regulators either ignored or didn't understand. And to this day, Rob and I were talking a little bit before we came on, don't understand the actual securities that they're talking about taking on. That was the problem then. I don't know what it takes to get the awareness through Washington and through the regulations that we have to change them, to be able to understand that we are continuing to take trillions and trillions and trillions of fabricated dollars that become real pain to real people out of the system. We're creating securities and continuing to and not changing the rules that allow them to operate. We're taking on Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, which are leading the speculation and changing those regulations to allow themselves to operate in a very murky way, and we're allowing them to become bank holding companies and bailing them. What does it take to sit there and look through the rules that have created this mess and drastically change them to allow a stable economy and a stable financial structure going forward? And that's really the question that I'm grappling with in the It Takes a Pillage book.
Rob Johnson, hasn't the FDIC been nationalizing banks at, like, what, the rate of 2 a week recently, as they take over banks, restructure them, and then sell them back to private industry?
They do. And auto companies and airlines and venture capital firms are restructured all the time. The FDIC does this as a matter of course. What is incumbent upon the FDIC is to exercise a clause in a 1991 law called prompt corrective action. What that means is when the bank is starting to fail and passes through zero, you're supposed to stop them quickly before they lose lots of money. When a bank has negative net worth, the incentives that Nomi spoke of become very perverse because they know they're in negative territory. Any losses aren't theirs anymore. They throw the long ball in the end zone like it's 4th down to try to score a touchdown and recover. So they start taking more risk as they get more insolvent, and the FDIC has to shut them promptly. They have done a very good job of that over the most recent 15 years or so, and in the last 2 years, I think Sheila Bair has done a pretty good job as well.
Nomi Prins, you agree?
No, I agree. She's done a great job. My concern with what happens after the FDIC leaves is taking these things private. Indy Mac, which is one of the bigger FDIC takeovers, they did a great job of working out the loans, helped homeowners, worked through a lot of mortgages, et cetera, and now they're selling it to a bunch of private equity guys who will be running it, 2 of whom are from Goldman and run a company called Dune, that are effectively a consortium of people that are going to run this bank forward. And that's the problem, to not create a bigger mess to deal with later. The FDIC came in and fixed a lot of things. There needs to be oversight and not a complete privatization of that bank in its pure equity sense to private bankers who are going to extract a lot of money from it in the next phase of the ongoing financial situation.
And the issue of stopping foreclosures, we had Marcy Kaptur on, the longest-serving Democratic woman member of Congress. The Ohio Congress member had a very simple solution. She encouraged from the floor of the House people to simply squat. Stay in the house that's about to be foreclosed. She said the mortgages were made, then bundled into securities and sold and resold repeatedly by the very Wall Street banks that are now benefiting from TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program. The banks foreclosing on families very often can't locate the actual loan note that binds the homeowner to the bad loan. Produce the note, Kaptur said. She recommends those facing foreclosure demands on the banks say, produce the note. What do you think of that, Rob Johnson?
I think that's an innovative strategy. I like that.
But what about mortgage foreclosures? What about people getting relief on the bottom as we keep talking about relief on the top?
Well, what we need, I believe, is the change in money politics in Washington, because these sensible ideas, which are analogous to bankruptcy, 9/11, a new start, avoiding foreclosure by renegotiating mortgages, has been opposed by community banks. Well, it's been opposed by the entire banking industry because they like to maintain their leverage. On the other hand, the devastation of neighborhoods, the destruction of property, all these things make the cost not a zero-sum game. And it's quite surprising to me that we haven't done more when even conservative economists like Martin Feldstein are advocating widespread foreclosure. Now, he wants to subsidize the banks to do it, But everybody sees the need for it. And Marcy Kaptur is very creative. I like that idea.
Final question. You're former head of the chief economist at the Senate Banking Committee. The whole issue of partisanship that's being raised now, how was it when you were there?
It was less violent than it is. It was less polarized than it is now. But at some level, I kind of subscribe to the David Sirota school, which is the hostile takeover means that both parties are somewhat aligned against the people in favor of campaign contributions. If you want to do all of this stuff well, Nomi talked about how to get rid of problems with the disposition of assets, how to monitor the FDIC. We need a vision of proper regulatory reform that we're going to sell these institutions or their pieces into. And in order to get that, we need to take money out of politics so the bankers and investment bankers don't make the rules of their own game.
And that's done how?
And how is that done? That's a difficult question. But I think it's probably, as Bill Grider says, the magic bullet is outrage, public outrage, and demanding change.
We'll leave it there. I want to thank you for being with us. Rob Johnson, former chief economist of the Senate Banking Committee, and Nomi Prins, former banker turned journalist, has now written her third book, is coming out soon. It Takes a Pillage. This is Democracy Now! Back in a minute.